What's the fastest way you've ever seen a new coworker get fired? A coworker sent an email to a female team member that he had a dream the night before that they had gotten married and he impregnated her. She sat across from me and I literally saw her face as she read the email. A strange look came across her face, then she walked into the manager's office. She left the office and he got called in and less than a minute later was packing his things. I believe from start to finish it took less than 5 minutes for him to send the email and get fired. New guy came into work hammered out of his mind and started trying to operate a forklift right in front of the regional safety manager. A lot of forklift certified and right in front of my OSHA handbook memes were shared that day. New guy offered to pull a semi-trailer to a dock for unloading. Said he did it in the army all the time. I told him, nah, you gotta get tested out by the safety guy first, someone else will handle it. 5 minutes later, I see him pulling the trailer around anyway. Okay, I gotta go tell this dude he's fired 2 hours in. Before I could advise him of his updated employment status, the damn trailer came loose of the tractor. Slid right off the back. He did know how to drive a semi. He did not know how to check the trailer was locked in. We hired a woman who turned out to be pretty abrasive. How she got hired, I have no idea. Our secretary was the sweetest lady in the office and never complained until this new hire talked with her for a few minutes. Right after talking to this horrible person, she approached the boss and said she would walk off the job if this new worker stayed on with us. By lunch, half the office was ready to walk off the job because of this abrasive person. She just had an utterly horrible way of talking to people that made them feel degraded and enraged. She was let go at the end of the day. Worked in a sales call center about 10 years ago, real brain-dead work. New guy starts on a Monday morning. After he gets trained up on the basics, which takes about an hour, he gets assigned a desk and sets off to work. 30 minutes later, it looks like little puffs of steam are rising up from his computer monitor. Turns out he was vaping on one of those disposable e-cigarettes, the kind that sort of tried to look like real cigarettes. He gets told by the boss that we can't vape indoors, and if he wants to, he'll have to go outside to do it on a break. About 30 minutes later again, the same thing happens. He gets caught again, and is told in no uncertain terms that if he wants to keep his job, he'll stop vaping at his desk. An hour later, he gets caught hiding under his desk vaping, and is promptly fired, all before lunchtime. Dude could have just gone outside. A guy at my work was caught playing World of Warcraft for hours each day. Boss called him in and told him that was wholly unacceptable and he had to stop immediately or he'd be canned. Less than an hour later, IT calls the same boss and says the guy is back in his office playing again. He was let go that day. When I was in college working at Walmart, cashier, I trained a girl on the register one evening. Maybe a week later, she comes through my lane buying groceries. I ask her how she's been, since I haven't seen her since the day after I trained her, and she tells me, unprompted, she's waiting on her court date. One of her friends went through her checkout lane, but she only actually scanned about a third of the items. About $1,500 of merchandise went out the door, free of charge. My response out loud was,
Oh.
My response in my head was,
Did you seriously not see the camera mounted above every single register?
Worked second shift at a factory. Late in the evening, we would prop open the doors along the side street to try to catch a breeze in the summertime. One night, this drunk guy stumbles in through the side door and just starts striking up conversations with everyone like he owns the place. I run over and try to tell him that he can't be in there, and he starts telling me he's supposed to start work that night. We kind of argue for about 5 or 10 minutes about the fact that I didn't have anyone new starting that night, and I finally tell him that he needs to contact someone in the office the next morning. When I came into work the next day, the first shift supervisor told me that he was supposed to have a new guy start that day, but he never showed up. I told him that the guy had actually shown up 12 hours early and staggering drunk. In a way, he was fired before his first day on the job. In high school, I worked at a clothing store as a cashier. Guy next to me has his sister come through with a huge pile of merchandise. He scans one item that was on clearance for like $2 over and over again for everything she had, which was likely hundreds of dollars. Didn't realize the manager was standing right behind him.
Go clock out and give me your name tag, you're gone.
He didn't argue or anything, just put his head down and walked off. The manager jumps on the register to clear the transaction out, and the sister takes out her card.
This is gonna be a credit.
Manager says.
Not for $2, it's not, get out of here.
The sister actually tried to complete the purchase like nothing had happened, lol. Day 1, delivering pizzas. I was the trainer. Dude wasn't familiar with the town at all. This was before GPS was a thing. Second delivery, he gets in the car and proceeds to floor it in the parking lot, showing off all 80 horsepower for the 30 feet before slamming on the brakes to turn onto the main street, nearly hitting a customer and her young child. I say, whoa, slow down in the parking lot, you almost hit that kid.
Fuck em,
was his response. That was his last delivery, lasted all of about 90 minutes. The new dishwasher told the hostess he wanted to fuck her in the ass in front of the entire staff and several early morning customers. It was borderline a mob. Pizza delivery gig. New guy on his first shift. Claims he's got previous experience, so doesn't need training. Clocks in. Grabs a few pizza orders ready for delivery. Leaves with his car to deliver. An hour later, the calls start coming in about the status of their order. They haven't been delivered. The guy just grabbed himself a bunch of free pizzas and left. I secretly admired him. Day 1 shot upright outside the building. Clocked in, went to work, was found an hour later, slumped over a table, slowly munching on stolen muffins like an elderly dog. Clarification. Shot up, as in they injected drugs with a needle. I used to work night audit/front desk at a motel adjacent to major highways. It was a super chill job, I loved my boss, and it was cool by me. But God, trying to hire and train someone to take over my hours once for maternity leave, and then when I was moving away, was a nightmare. One lady claimed to be computer literate, and then tried to use the mouse to physically touch the correct spot on the monitor when I asked her to click on a field. Another got extremely confused when I mentioned that sleeping with a guest was completely out of bounds. A guy got arrested, and fired of course, for selling drugs to someone out the night window. It was just an absolute shit show. Before I moved, I gave my boss a 2-month notice, because I knew hiring and training was gonna be a nightmare. About a week before my final shift, we finally got someone in place. She was more than a bit strange and could certainly have used a spot of mental health care, but hey, I can't throw stones. She showed up, grasped the basics of the job, etc. About a week after I left, I learned that she had quit because she didn't realize that night audit was a purely overnight job. Ig. 6 hours. Call center job. She showed up to orientation on day 1 about an hour late. Hey, stuff happens. Then we go on a 15-minute break. She goes out to take a phone call, comes back in after about 45 minutes. We go to lunch, it's 30 minutes. She comes back over an hour later. We go on afternoon break. When the 15-minute break is up, one of the trainers gets up and steps out in the hall and closes the door behind him. We hear her arrive and argue with him about 20 minutes after that. He comes back in and gets the stuff she left at her desk, and we never see her again. New bartender was supposed to start on a Wednesday afternoon. She showed up an hour and a half late and went straight back behind the bar to grab a towel and start wiping down tables without even saying a word to me or asking where our manager was, and just looking at her movements she was clearly tweaking out. I went to the back to go let the manager know the new girl is finally here, and when we came back out front she was hiding in the back corner booth doing a line of coke off the table. All in all, this girl worked about 3 minutes for us, which consisted of her running a dry towel over already clean tables and then leaving another table for me to clean cocaine residue off of. How about getting fired before you start working? Our boss hired a new person as a contractor, and he was available to work immediately, so he was scheduled to start work the day after his interview. Next morning, my boss turns up, very annoyed, and shows me his phone. The new hire had sent several rambling and confused SMSs that could be summarized as "had a few drinks last night, won't be able to come into work today, you know how it is." My boss told him the contract was cancelled. I worked maintenance on a golf course. The owner hired this really hot girl to be the beverage cart girl. She had no experience, but I guess it doesn't matter when you're really hot. After about an hour of training, she gets sent out on the course in a cart full of booze. Later on that day, we start finding random trash across the golf course, consisting of empty airplane bottles and both full and empty bags of chips. We follow the empty airplane bottles like Hansel and Gretel until we find the beverage cart half submerged in a pond. By time we figured out what had happened, she had jumped in her car and left. Thank you for watching, friend. Until next time, and remember to stay hydrated.